genuinely one of the most amazing things in my life is when it comes to writing and creating things is I work with James DeFrond, and we started this journey together. We've known each other since we were kids. He's my best friend. But we have a way of working now that has sort of stood us in good stead over the last 10 years. He'll sit tirelessly at a keyboard, and I will just talk at him, and we'll laugh a lot and we'll mess around, and then we'll just have a load of sort of dialogue, a load of ideas that are sort of for a specific show or thing we're coming out, and then we'll basically just start knocking away at those. So when we would make an action team, we sort of like threw ourselves into that sort of world, or the warm-up guy, or we've just done a BBC One thing. We completely sort of, that world becomes everything. It becomes all-encompassing for us. Murder and Successful is the same. So for me, the whole is getting something down. At the moment I'm writing a Western, which is like the weirdest thing ever, but there's days where I'm like, I think I can't think in that tone. I can't think. But as long as you're getting something down, as long as something's on the paper, as long as you're typing something in, and you keep on pushing yourself throughout the day, at some point you're going to have a breakthrough. The worst thing you can ever do is just go, I'm just going to go down the pub, or I don't really feel it today, because my thing is, I was a scaffolder for a long time, as ridiculous as this sounds. If I didn't turn up for work, I wouldn't have a job, and someone else would just have it instead. And writing's very much the same. If I don't wake up at 8:30 in the morning, start work at 9 and treat this like a job, at some point someone else is going to chip in, and that's gone. And it is dedication, it is graft, and that's the only thing that's always going to see you right. But on that FIFA is, when you do have a mental block, have something that can drift you away from it. So we used to reward ourselves with games of FIFA. If you wrote 3 scenes in a day, you'd have a FIFA tournament together. And weirdly, I haven't grown much from that kid who was, so my mum got me to do homework, so I was still that kid.
I think the battles are difficult too, because they read really easily on the page.
Yeah, big battle.
Yeah, big battle.
Yeah.
So-and-so rides, and then that's it.
And they're not particularly designed.
It doesn't read well, but actually they're intensely detailed, aren't they?
Yeah.
And yet, when you think back,
certainly from Rob's point of view,
and when you think back to previous series, some of the battles have become, I don't know if it's a production time thing, but they have become iconic. You think of, I don't know, Hard Home, or the Battle of the Bastards. And so would that have been design-led, or was that in the script how that would look? Or a bit of both?
I think it's between probably the writers and the director of that particular episode.
I think as that was directed by Miguel Sapochnik, I think he had a lot of massaging that he did to that to make it work the way he needed it to work. As I say, on the page, it doesn't necessarily read as being as detailed as what it was. Yeah. And certainly for Rob, I mean, you find that they're much more work than they initially appeared.
Yeah, just the amount of prosthetics and dummies and costume elements and armoury elements that we have to sort of go into. So yeah.
Dead people, dead horses, mud.
Yeah, it sounds funny, but Game of Thrones, from a set deck perspective, you sort of think it's all going to be sort of nice cushions and drapes, and actually sort of a mud and dead bodies.
Do you have a warehouse somewhere full of dead bodies?
We've got
They're just littered around the back lot.
We've got a huge amount of dead bodies.
Not only that, but dead horses.
Dead horses, dead bodies, and
dismembered bodies.
Dismembered bodies, and then this year we've got into
Other stuff.
Other stuff. I won't go any further.
Rob and I have been saying that you won't be able to tell us from one of the dead bodies by the end. We'll just like go and play on the dead bodies.
Why does Mummy look like a white walker?
Nobody will be able to tell the difference.
I always wanted to film my route to work, because there's the one corridor along the back of one of the Titanic studios, and you walk along, and there's been a dead body wrapped up, laying there, I would say, for the last 5 months. And I walked past it the other day, and there's somebody, because the camera department putting their tents at one, what's this here for when I don't know, and they dragged it away, and it'd been laying there like for months and months.
But it definitely wasn't real. Did you check?
Well, I know, I didn't check.
I find the audition process incredibly difficult and intimidating. And it wasn't always something I had a huge amount of practice at either. I think as time has gone by, really just investing in the work and finding something that sparks your interest. I remember that's what my art teacher taught me, was make it personal. And then if you've got that to hang on to, then you can stop worrying about how you can't stop blushing and you want to go to the toilet all the time. A friend told me in 2011 that there was something written about me on the internet being in an HBO show. And so I looked it up. I'd never done anything like that before. And I saw all of these incredible fan forums featuring my name. I Googled the character. I thought you should just read the books first. That is my training, but I couldn't wait. I had to know what the character was. And that really blew my mind. The idea that there might be this portrayal of a woman in mainstream entertainment who was entirely unconventional, who was physically very strong, but that wasn't the most interesting thing about her. The most interesting thing about her is that that is coupled with a extreme sensitivity and vulnerability. And whilst she was achieving these huge and impressive and deeply skilled physical feats, that she is slowly developing as a person, as a woman and as a human. It's like a sort of rite of passage that she goes through. And also it did examine what it is to be unconventional, particularly as a woman within society.
I think you have to stay on top of it. Absolutely, you have to know about new developments, new bits of kit that comes out, and sort of be open to experiment, and try out new things. I'm a big fan of LED lighting, all that kind of modern multicolor stuff, which is really handy and really practical. With cameras, they're all so good now, so I don't really mind, and also sometimes you don't have a choice, for instance, on the production I'm nominated for, Black Mirror is made with Netflix, and Netflix only approves cameras that can shoot in 4K, which means that I can't use an Alexa, which would be my preferred camera. So I had to use a Red camera instead. But, the results are fantastic, the quality of the cameras are so good now. So first of all, they're so user-friendly, so you can sort of pretty much work it out. How, if you have your basic knowledge about cameras, you can work it out as you go along. But also there's usually an assistant on set who knows how to press all the right buttons. So as long as I know how to light and how to run the set and run the crew, then it's going to be fine.
So now for Who, obviously you grew up watching it. When you first got the call that it was going to happen, what do you remember your reaction when you found out?
It wasn't a call. I was in Russell T Davies's front room, who was the showrunner, and he'd just completed season 1, and he was showing me bits of it, and I thought he was just showing me because I was interested, and because we'd been working together on another show on a show called Casanova, which he'd also written, and he said, "Oh, come round, I'll show you some sort of early rough cuts." And I went, "Oh, brilliant, great, this will be fun," because this was the return of Doctor Who, the show that I'd grown up with, as indeed had Russell, and so he showed me a few bits, and then he sort of dropped the bombshell that they were looking for someone to take over. So it sort of knocked the wind out of me, really. Very odd when you've grown up with something, you've been a real proper fan of something with posters on your wall, and my granny knitted me a long scarf and a cricket jumper, and and I careened around my back garden pretending to be all sorts of different characters. Extraordinary that all these years later that should sort of come full circle, and that somebody and that somebody should be asking me to be part of this show that hadn't even been on TV for however many years. It all seemed very unlikely. It is pretty unlikely, really. So it was a quite surreal out of body experience, and it was very exciting. And then it was a bit scary. And I took a sort of week or so to really think it through on Russell's instruction, because of course he'd in many ways had the same experience, the show he'd grown up with, that had inspired him to become a writer, and he knew that you were going to have a myriad responses to this. It's exciting, and then of course there's a reality check that you go through. You go, oh, I have to actually turn up and do this and not break it, and not sort of disappoint my 8-year-old self. That's the hardest thing. And even though Doctor Who had been off TV for a while, the amount of attention and scrutiny it was getting, even before that first season had aired, you were aware that you were coming into something that if it didn't work, you would have a very public failure, and that would be quite difficult to. And you didn't even know how the first season was going to be received at that stage, so you thought I might be coming into something that doesn't carry on. I might film this tiny scene to introduce myself at the end of season 1, only to find that's it. the shortest serving actor in the role. So there were a lot of things to think through, and also I was aware that I would be surrendering a certain amount of anonymity. I'd enjoyed being a jobbing actor. I'd enjoyed having certain people would recognise you occasionally, but it wasn't something that impacted on my life particularly. And I was aware enough to know that there would be my everyday existence would be altered by taking on a part like this. Even if it didn't work, they're just, your face would be splashed around enough.
Right.
So there were all sorts of things to process, and then I did one day just wake up and think, what's the debate? No, but sort of really, because you kind of go around the houses thinking all the reasons why you shouldn't do it, why it might be a good thing, and then I just thought, come on, this is an extraordinary opportunity to work with an extraordinary writer on a show that you love. What's the debate? So when I had that sort of moment of enlightenment, there was no turning back.
I find going for walks really helpful, and you listen to music really helpful. So I have a playlist for everything I'm writing, and I chuck loads of tracks into a kind of Spotify playlist, and then if I'm struggling, I might just listen to that and maybe do something completely else, like, I don't know, I say tidy my flat, but I'm messy, so I do something kind of that doesn't feel like I'm thinking or working, and I think that if you try not to focus on something, it tends to find its way out, or I might just do some research about the project. So something I'm writing at the moment, I couldn't write anything yesterday, and what I had done was then terrible, so I just did some research and made notes, and then I felt at least like I'd spent 2 hours productively rather than looking at a blank screen.